Good evening, skippers. Ram 55 back with another round of Virtual Skipper 5. Tonight I have highlights of the semifinal round between the United States and Australia. If you followed the series, you know that we went through a round robin of 12 races to determine the top 4 boats that are now meeting in the semifinals. The United States finished the round robin series 11 wins, 1 loss, and the only loss was to Australia in round 1. You may recall I made a major error with sail trim because I was new to the game at the time and couldn't find the right button to manage my sails. By the time I figured it out and got things going again, Australia had cruised to an easy victory. Today we're out for revenge. The USA boat has an advantage in the hull, spinnaker, and crew, so we're looking for a much better result this time around. Today I'm doing highlights because the racing was anticlimactic in the start, after the start, and not worth boring you with. Although the races were a bore, there were still some learning points I would like to highlight that may improve your own racing skills. So let's get out to the water. Race 1 of the semis was in 4-6 winds, and as demonstrated in multiple previous videos, AI skippers simply cannot cope with these wind speeds while flying their spinnakers. So here's the course. Start finish line there in the middle, going to the top, right turn, around the buoy, back to the second buoy, and then to the finish line. Pretty simple course. At the beginning I'm doing my usual pre-race maneuvering, getting ready for the start. So we got to get across that line to the pre-race side before the counter gets down to 2 minutes, and we both have no problem doing that. You'll have to excuse me this evening. I'm just recovering from a case of bronchitis, feeling much better, but I can still feel a little congestion in my sinuses and in my throat. So hopefully we'll bear through this. This is a more typical course where the wind on the first leg is at a 90-degree angle to the start-finish line, which means that you have to beat to windward on the first leg. That's a traditional way of starting a sailboat race, and some of the races in the past you actually end up on a broad reach or a beam reach, and it makes it a lot more difficult to start. You can see the first mark indicated by that green arrow off to the right side of the screen. Now we're 1 minute to the start. Those flags on the right side, there's a large white pennant with a red dot on it. That's the warning signal that goes up 5 minutes prior to the start of the race. And that blue flag with the white square in the middle is a preparatory signal, signaling 4 minutes to start. And if I'm not mistaken, in real sailboat racing, the P flag, or that blue one, comes down 1 minute prior to the start, but it actually is still up, so I'm not sure how that works. So here we are, 15 seconds from the start. You can see I've got a full head of speed, and I'm on starboard tack. The Australia boat is on port tack, but they are just barely moving. And I use that to my advantage, because right now at the start, I can turn into the wind with a good head of steam up, and my momentum will carry me ahead of the Australia boat. Plus I have a slightly better angle to the first mark. So they were just barely crawling. I had good speed and used that momentum to shoot into the lead. And right now I've got probably about a boat and a half, maybe 2 boat length lead, and a slightly better angle on the wind to get to the first mark. We had a fair race leading up to that first mark. As you can see, comfortable lead now, about a 3-boat length lead. I'll have no problems on this tack making it around that first mark. Australia tucks in behind. They're in my dirty wind. So the sail comes off my sail. It's tumbling just like in automobile racing. There's a draft, and that spoils the flow of wind across the boat behind's sails, and they don't get quite as much power from the wind. As I round the first mark and set the spinnaker, you'll see that I have a 7.8 second lead, and this is where the race kind of goes to heck in a handbasket. As we know, the AI skipper, as he sets his spinnaker, has his usual meltdown. You can see that the wind speed is about 30 knots, and I've noticed from previous videos that I've made that the AI can handle up to about 25 knots, and above that they simply flounder in the wind speed, or with that wind speed, after they get their spinnakers up. Now if you look at the mini map on the bottom left, you'll see that that Australian boat is barely moving. In fact, I'm having a little bit of difficulty keeping my boat under control, going too fast in the wind conditions with the large spinnaker set. That AI boat is hardly moving at all after rounding that first mark. Again, almost broaching there because of the high winds. It's a real effort on my part to keep the boat under control. But we managed to do that, and then from this point on, really no race at all. We're going through a gate as opposed to rounding a mark. And a gate means simply we can go to the right or the left as long as we go between those two buoys, one marked by the green arrow and the other side marked by the orange arrow. As long as we go between those two, we are legal this leg of the course. I drop my spinnaker, come into the wind, heading back to the mark we just left. It'll be basically a broad reach, and here's something interesting. We're now approaching the third mark, and you'll see the importance of wind shifts on tactics. Initially, I'm sailing a heading of 308 with a course over the ground of 306. The course at the next mark is 296, so I can't quite get there without tacking. As we continue, you'll see that we get a lift, i.e. the wind gives a shift that gives me a more favorable heading to the next mark and allows me to sail a course that will fetch the mark. So you'll see the wind arrow kind of green right now. Means we have the boat trimmed up to the direction of the wind, so we're getting good speed, and we're able to fetch that mark right now in this heading. Now you also see that the current is helping us a little bit. It's pushing us to the left, which will help us a little bit in rounding that mark. But the wind is a fickle thing. You can see that we just got headed. In other words, the wind shifted more toward the front of my boat. I have to fall off in order to keep my boat speed up, and now once again we're unable to make the mark. At this point, the option I have is to consider pinching, which means sailing up a little bit closer to the wind than the optimum boat speed. I sacrifice boat speed for a better heading, and if done for a short period of time, it allows me to round the mark without losing too much time at the cost of slower boat speed. The alternative is to tack in order to make the mark, but remember, if I tack once, I have to tack back again. In other words, 2 tacks, and each time I tack, that costs me time. So which one's worse? Pinching, losing boat speed, or tacking twice and losing time that way? That's why us skippers get the big bucks, right? It's a judgment call. If you pinch for a short time, it may be worth it. Another factor to consider is where's your opponent and how does he affect your strategy. The worst case is what exactly I did here. If I pinch, I still have to tack because I can't make the mark. Not only did I lose boat speed, but I have to lose time from tacking twice. So anyways, I tack, now I'm able to fetch that mark. So now it's obvious and I still can't make the mark, had to tack. Today, because of the AI problems, it really wasn't much of a factor. So another lesson to watch is those wind shifts. Look for a pattern. How often is the wind shifting? Do you expect the next wind shift to help or hurt you? Play your cards right. With a bit of luck, it may make the difference at the finish line. Here we are going by the Australian boat, and you can see they're basically out for a day sail. Don't really know what they're doing. And here we are basically approaching the finish line, and the Australian boat is just out there sailing in circles. So that's the end of the first race of the semifinals. The United States beats Australia and Switzerland beats New Zealand. Pretty anticlimactic race, but I think we saw some important points there. I'm paying attention to the wind shifts, anticipating whether the next one might help or hurt you, and whether or not you need a head or a lift to get a better advantage over your opponent heading toward the next mark. So now we sail on to race 2 of the semis. You can see that this is ideal wind conditions. Force 5 on a flood tide. Wind conditions perfect, but that flood tide proved to be crucial in this race. And in the end, it was even a worse race than the first. So here's the course. Kind of a zigzag course all over, but an interesting course. I never actually sailed that one before. So 2.5 minutes to the start of the race. We have to get across that imaginary line before the counter gets down to 2 minutes. And we'll have no problems doing that. So for the next 2 minutes, I'll be going through my usual pre-race routine, figuring out how to get the advantage over my opponent at the start of the race. Sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's skill. This one is another traditional start with the wind perpendicular to the start-finish line. That means another beat to windward for the first leg, and that's the kind of race I prefer. You can start on either starboard or port tack, and then tactics play a bigger factor at the start in this kind of a race. One end of the start-finish line is indicated by that buoy that we just passed, the green buoy. The other end is the committee boat right on the nose there. Now that's a slightly different flag at the start there, that blue flag with a white dot on it. I'm not familiar with that one. It's not the traditional starting flag. Usually it's a white pennant with an orange dot on it, indicating the 5-minute to start race signal. And then they raise the P flag, which is the blue flag there with the white square in the middle. That's a preparatory signal 4 minutes prior to the start. At 1 minute, the P flag should come down, and the race start is when the white flag is generally dropped. I'm not sure what those flags mean. I'll have to do a little bit of research on that one. So anyways, this race, again, very anticlimactic. I'm just going to show you some highlights. And the current, more than anything else, played a huge factor in this. So now we're coming up 12 minutes or 12 seconds to the start. I've got a full head of steam on starboard tack. Australia's on port tack, so I'll have advantage. And something odd happens right after the start. I'm on starboard. Australia on port. I clearly have right of way. You'll see up in the top corner when I pop that up. I have a green 10. Boom. Australia runs right into me. Port tack boat has to keep clear of the starboard tack boat. So Australia clearly had to stay out of my way. They run right into the side of me. and no penalty. Can't figure that one out. So they fall off on a starboard tack, several boat lengths behind, but I've never seen that happen before. Generally, this game has a very non-partial judge, and if somebody's in violation of the rules, a penalty gets assessed. But in this case, they clearly ran into my boat when I had the right-of-way, yet no penalty. I don't know if that was a glitch or a bug, I don't know. And as you can see from that little indication on the top right, Rule 10 applied. Opposite tack boats, the boat on starboard has right-of-way, and Rule 15 was not in effect. And Rule 15 says if you tack to obtain right-of-way, you have to give the other boat time to get out of your way. But clearly I was on starboard the whole time, not a factor. Only Rule 10 applied, they ran into me, no foul. Now Rule 12 is applying, and that's where two boats are on the same tack with one boat clear ahead. I'm clearly way ahead of the Australian boat. And the boat behind would be overtaking me if they were going faster, and they would have to stay out of the boat that's ahead's way. Now we're approaching the first mark. I have a pretty nice advantage, and I'm expecting a good race at this point with perfect wind conditions. Not expecting the AI skipper to have any problems with his spinnaker like they have with the winds when they get to be force 6 or above. Approaching the mark, I'm using the rule of thumb of about 80 degrees. If my course of the next mark is 80 degrees off my heading, it's time to tack. That should mean I could, on that heading, be able to get around the mark. Now look at the compass on the right. That yellow arrow is indicating where the current's coming from, and you can see right now it is almost off the side of the boat and pushing me to the left. And right here it looks like I should be able to make that mark very easily, but that current becomes a big factor and it's moving me closer and closer to the mark. As I approach it, I just barely squeeze around the mark. Can't say as much for the AI skipper. As he comes around, we don't see it, but as he comes around, he was unable to compensate for the current. His last-ditch efforts to tack were too late, and he ends up hitting the buoy, and you'll see that he has a foul posted here pretty shortly. So there he is, rounding the mark, and boom, you heard him hit it. He gets an immediate 360-degree penalty. He has to do a 360-degree turn before the end of the race. I got my spinnaker set, and we're off to the races. Here we are approaching second mark. Just to point out, look how close that spectator boat is. Now, if we had a fleet race or a couple other boats here that we were using some tactics, we might need that room to maneuver. It's a little bit too close for comfort. It really doesn't matter in this game. I thought that was a little bit odd that that spectator boat was a little bit close. Well, here's another example of the current pushing me so that this time I can't round the mark. It looks like on this heading, okay, the buoy's to the left, I should be able to make it. Again, the current's pushing me to the left. Only this time I realize, based on the course over the ground, because that takes into account wind drift as well as current, I just am not going to make it. So I go and tack early, realizing that I'm just not going to make it. I can't pinch, and result in 2 tacks to get around the mark. I tried pinching, but it just wasn't going to work. 2 tacks, around the mark, big lead, heading toward the finish. Now look at the top right. You'll see that the Australia boat picked up 4 fouls. I actually watched this replay in an in-game replay to see what happened. And Australia tried several times to round that first mark and hit it every time. He picked up foul after foul, and eventually they appeared to abandon the race and continued to luff off near the mark. In match racing, if a boat has 2 or more than 2 unserved penalties, that boat is disqualified. And that may be what happened here. I don't know. So the United States trounces Australia, the only boat to beat us in the round robin, and we win our semi-final match 2-0. Switzerland advances to the finals as well, as they defeat New Zealand. So now it'll be the United States versus Switzerland in the finals. Hopefully we will have a much better race with some more exciting racing. As always, leave messages, like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Your comments are always appreciated. We'll see you out on the water soon. Once again, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found something interesting there for you.